Nearly 200 battles in a day, 150 air bombs, and 6,000 drone strikes. Pokrovsk continues to hold out. Encirclement is off the table. Azov is clearing the salient near Dobropillia, and Russian losses have reached such a scale that they're now sending cooks into assaults. The GUR published an intercepted conversation among the occupiers. Everything happening on the front today, watch it right now. The Russians have started using a new tactic at the front. Specifically, this concerns the Lyman direction. This is according to the soldiers of the 66th Separate Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Now, the occupiers are trying to bypass Ukrainian forward positions and send assault groups into the rear. There they find any suitable places to hide and gather. One of the key tasks assigned to them by their command is to reach the positions of Ukrainian mortar crews and drone operators.
The enemy really is trying to operate in small assault groups. This is basically what distinguishes all areas of the front today. Today, the Russians are finally trying to carry out a strategic regrouping of their forces. In some directions it has been completed, while in others, quite active regrouping is still taking place.
In particular, the main goal of this regrouping is to strengthen the main axis of attack on Pokrovsk. Despite the fact that the Russian offensive has smoothly shifted from summer into autumn, their objectives have not changed.
The most active direction, both in terms of the number of assault actions and in terms of priority for the Russians, is the Pokrovsk direction. One of the elements of this enemy offensive is Dobropillia. Let's not rush with these announcements, let alone declare any definitive victories. But on the Dobropillia axis, some Russian military units have found themselves in, let's say, very uncomfortable and precarious situations, and accordingly the enemy is actively trying to bring in additional reserves there to support these beleaguered units.
Dobropillia, by the way, is the main failure of the Russian army this month and continues to bring encouraging news. The Russian army had to reduce pressure north of Pokrovsk in order to help their inept colleagues who are encircled. However, the reinforced unit in the ISU is coping with these reinforcements as well, systematically destroying the enemy.
They didn't make it in time, couldn't really secure their positions, couldn't maneuver their forces at the front lines, and in general didn't quite understand why they needed to do it. Without completely encircling the strategic city of Pokrovsk from its northern flank, any significant movement or advance toward the crucial area of Dobropillia would undoubtedly constitute a very risky and perilous military operation. This critical assessment has been unequivocally confirmed by the highly experienced and dedicated Azov Corps forces, along with other loyal and steadfast troops, all of whom are currently and methodically dealing with the entrenched enemy group in a highly effective manner.
Reportedly, enemy losses here are so significant that they're even sending cooks into battle. A corresponding intercepted communication was published by Nasha.
Gore is a fascinating and complex concept that has been explored in various contexts, often referring to a fictional planet or a philosophical framework. However, its true essence lies in its multifaceted interpretations and the profound impact it has had on literature and thought. The intricate details surrounding Gore, including its unique culture, societal structures, and philosophical underpinnings, contribute to its enduring appeal and significance in contemporary discourse.
Despite such problems, it seems that Putin is not planning to withdraw from the Pokrovsk area anytime soon. According to analysts, the success of the entire war may depend on this very Kremlin operation. However, these conditions are categorically unacceptable to the TVSO. In particular, due to the rather successful resistance to Russian attacks, the Kremlin was unable this year to send the main forces of its troops to exercises in Belarus. Unlike in 2023, because everyone is now engaged at the front. As a result, they couldn't even muster 10,000 soldiers for the show. At the same time, having gathered everything possible for today, Moscow decided to increase pressure in another direction towards Sloviansk, according to our command. There has been some minor advancement by the Russian Federation here, but as Russian media claim, there is no breakthrough of the front line. This is
the very difficult frontline direction for us today. I will avoid, any radical statements about what is happening there. Unfortunately, the enemy's offensive actions are continuing. We understand perfectly well what this means for the Russians. Today, their main goal is to try to enter large settlements of the local network or MAN, such as Siversk. We are saying that, unfortunately, in the Serebryansky forest, the Russians are also advancing today.
But in the Sumy direction, on the contrary, the armed forces of Ukraine are advancing. In some areas, the enemy was even pushed back to the border, back behind the curb. On the Kharkiv line of contact, there are no changes. With one caveat, the defense forces are not just holding their ground, but are eliminating dozens of enemy assault groups every day.
Small infantry groups are then followed by corresponding buildups at certain locations, and the enemy tries to create these small bridgeheads in order to gain a foothold, expand, and accordingly wait there for fresher and more fully equipped forces to arrive.
But often, the full-fledged forces don't even make it to the positions at all. Just in the past 24 hours, our aviation, missile forces, and artillery of the defense forces have struck 6 areas where enemy personnel and equipment were concentrated. At the same time, they hit a drone control center, 1 heavy flamethrower system, and 5 artillery assets.
The occupiers are trying to break through the Ukrainian defenses. The Russians are simultaneously advancing on 5 different sections of the front. Thus, in the Velika Mikailivka direction of the Zaporizhzhia region, the enemy is actively preparing for the offensive phase. The main goal of the occupier is to reach the Verbov stronghold.
We actually found out what would happen.
We learned that there would be assault actions, but we did not expect the enemy to advance on such a broad front. The enemy will approach along the front.
The situation is somewhat better in the Novopavlivka direction. Here, our defenders managed to take control of the settlement, Filial. Previously, it had been repeatedly attacked by the enemy, who is trying to seize it. But now the positions are held by the Ukrainian armed forces. The military explains that this tactical node is extremely important for the armed forces of Ukraine, as it allows them to monitor the movement of the occupiers' infantry and equipment. The situation in the Pokrovsk direction is difficult but stable. The main fighting there is concentrated in the area of Vladimirovka. The Ukrainian armed forces control most of the settlement, but the enemy does not stop, strikes with cabs, tries to change the tactical situation, and may attempt to push through our lines. At the same time, Ukrainian units are conducting counterattacks southeast of Sofivka to regain control over the local 3 lines.
The enemy
Is not stupid at all. After each assault, they conduct a debriefing. They take what works and use it next time, and what doesn't work, they don't use again. That's why, in this case, there was very active cooperation with the FPV drone operators. There was also active cooperation with reconnaissance UAVs like the Zala. Then the Lancets were launched. The enemy is responding very actively.
In the Konstantinivka direction, the Russian army is trying to gain a foothold in the dacha settlements in front of the city, amassing forces and equipment for a breakthrough. Nevertheless, our fighters are systematically targeting the occupiers. That's why the location is currently in a so-called gray zone. The key vector for the Russians right now is the southeastern flank. It is from there that the main strike on the city may begin. The further course of the fighting depends on our ability to timely detect and eliminate concentrations of enemy forces.
very
The artillery performed very well. A lot of that equipment. A light vehicle was blown up by mines because, as a normal regular brigade, we are very good at fortifying the front line from an engineering standpoint.
The fighting also continues unabated in the Siversk-Lyman direction. Dronivka, Siversk itself, and nearby villages on the approaches to the city have come under attack. Active combat operations are also ongoing in Zarakne. Neither we nor the enemy have stable control over the territory there. At the same time, special forces from the main intelligence directorate struck an enemy surface-to-air missile system. The GUR fighters detected and successfully struck a Bukmike 3 system belonging to the Russian invaders. The cost of this SAM system ranges from $40 to $50 million. Today, the Kremlin also lost another one of Putin's expensive military toys. This time it was the Aryan Strike Reconnaissance UAV. Its operational range is about 300 kilometers, and the approximate cost of the downed metal bird is over $5 million. On the eve, Ukrainian drones flew into yet another Russian oil refinery. UAVs attacked a whole range of Russia's oil refining facilities and enemy military-industrial complex sites. A major methanol production plant in the Russian city of Gubaka Permkrai was hit. The strike on the occupiers' key chemical infrastructure located more than 1,600 kilometers from the Ukrainian border came as a real shock to the Kremlin. The Kirishi oil refinery in Leningrad Oblast was also hit. According to reports, the Russians shot down 3 drones in the area of the city of Kirishi, but their debris caused a fire at the facility. However, eyewitness videos suggest otherwise. Footage from the refinery looks more like a direct drone strike than shrapnel damage to the oil processing plant. By the way, the Kirishi oil refinery is considered one of the largest in Russia, and before the arrival of Ukrainian drones was capable of processing about 20 million tons of oil per year. Unfortunately, there was also a loud incident the day before in the Kyiv region. In the middle of the night, explosions occurred on the railway there. Powerful flashes and repeated sounds of explosions thundered in the area of the village of Kalinivka. As it turned out, munitions detonated there during transportation by rail. A series of explosions damaged the overhead contact system, resulting in dozens of shipments being delayed, and trains are now running around the damaged section. By a random coincidence, the Kharkiv-Przemysl passenger train found itself at the epicenter of the explosions. The train made an emergency stop and hundreds of passengers were urgently evacuated from the scene to the nearest forest belt. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured, and after a few hours, the train continued its journey along the route.
Belarus is strengthening its position as a military staging ground for Russia.
The issue of a Russian base on Belarusian territory is discussed very often. Listen, it's a made-up problem.
Journalists from the Schemes Project, together with the Belarusian Service of Radio Liberty and the Estonian publications Delphi and EST Express, analyzed dozens of satellite images from Planet Lab for the years 2022 to 2025 and created a map of Belarusian military facilities.
As of the present moment, either entirely new military facilities are actively being constructed and developed within Belarus, or existing older training grounds and related infrastructure are undergoing comprehensive modernization and significant upgrades. These extensive efforts are primarily being undertaken with the explicit purpose of thoroughly preparing the Belarusian military infrastructure to accommodate and facilitate more extensive, comprehensive and frequent training exercises for Russian servicemen.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The largest construction project is underway near the village of Pavlovka, south of Minsk. Work began in June 2024. By September 2025, the construction site had already expanded to more than 2 square kilometers. That's about 280 football fields. Experts suggest that this is precisely where Russia may deploy its formidable Oreshnik ballistic missile system, the very weapon Moscow loves to use to scare the whole world. This location is not accidental. Previously, this was the site of a Soviet military base, Military Camp No. 25 Pavlovka. It was home to the 306th Strategic Missile Regiment, equipped with R-12 ballistic missiles and mobile Pioneer and Topol systems. After Belarus joined the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons in 1993, the regiment was relocated to Russia and the base was destroyed.
In my opinion, these facilities are connected to strategic-level equipment that could be deployed in Belarus, whether it's Oreshnik or something else. It is possible that this will be nuclear weapons, since there may have been facilities for their storage at this site during the Cold War.
Satellite images show large-scale activity, clearing of forest, earth embankments, the construction of 13 ammunition depots measuring 30 by 20 meters, 3 hangars 100 meters long, and foundations for future buildings, all connected by a network of new roads. Overall, the facility consists of 4 separate sections of the base, the main one and 3 spread out over the area, forming a true military district.
I can't imagine what else it could be. If the Oreshnik base appears here, it could be perfectly suited for this role.
The second base is being built on the outskirts of Gomel, less than 40 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. Work here began back at the end of 2023. A training and tactical field, parade ground, barracks, and a dining hall for 680 people are being built here. In terms of size and infrastructure, the facility matches existing military bases in Belarus and could potentially accommodate a brigade of about 3,000 personnel.
Basically, what we're seeing now is that Belarus's military infrastructure is truly experiencing a second wind. This could be connected both to Lukashenko's desire to attract additional funding amid the wave of militarization coming from Putin. Put simply, Lukashenko is using this as an opportunity to upgrade his own army's infrastructure. But of course, in general terms, this is yet another clear and undeniable demonstration of the significant threat that can come both directly from the Russian aggressor and indeed from Belarus as a potential and very real staging ground for an attack.
And let us remind you that in 2022, Belarus was used as a staging ground for the attack on Ukrainian territory. From its territory, huge columns of military equipment advanced and about 700 missiles were launched. In addition, the modernization also affected the network of airfields. It was these airfields that Russia used as a base for its aviation at the start of the full-scale war. This includes Olmeni, Lida, Baranovichi, Ziabrovka, and Machulishchi. Now, many of them have had their runways repaired, received new hangars, air defense systems, and fortifications.
If Russia really does have plans for a new large-scale invasion of Ukraine or one of the countries from Belarusian territory, it will be impossible to do so without the mass transfer of aviation to Belarusian airfields. It is precisely the movement of airplanes and helicopters to these bases, as well as the deployment of additional air defense systems, that will be an obvious signal of the Kremlin preparing for offensive actions.
In the central part of the country, near Osipovichi, a different kind of logistics is noticeable. The development of the 465th Missile Brigade, new hangars for Iskanders, warehouses, and the construction of a separate railway branch between this brigade and the neighboring 1,405th Ammunition Base. The latter, according to the investigation, is considered one of the possible sites for the modernization of storage infrastructure, which experts associate with the preparation of high-security facilities, not ruling out the possibility of storing Russian strategic munitions there.
The military exercises themselves are a very serious and significant signal of the direct and deliberate preparation by the Russian Federation, as well as its various satellites and allied nations for active and potentially aggressive military actions, either directly against Ukraine from our vulnerable northern front direction, or, which is currently considered more realistic and a pressing concern, the critical Suwałki issue, meaning a potential strike against the sovereign nations of Poland and Lithuania. Therefore, all of this constitutes extremely alarming and concerning signals that are being actively and thoroughly assessed directly by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. We can see that, in parallel, the North Atlantic Alliance has also been conducting a series of military exercises over the past several months, starting with Air Defender 2025 in Poland. In October, there will be nuclear exercises as well, and of course there is also the redeployment of NATO forces closer to the alliance's eastern flank as a demonstration of readiness for possible provocations from the Russian Federation.
Belarus has long set itself on the path of complete subordination to Russia. New military bases, modernized training grounds, strategic missiles, all of this is turning the country into a part of Putin's military machine. Every warehouse, every hangar, every road is a step toward making the country a territory from which Moscow can threaten not only Ukraine, but all of Europe. And judging by the pace of construction, this process is not just continuing, it is accelerating.
The number of Russian units actively using banned chemical weapons against Ukrainian soldiers is growing. The cases of use are already numbering in the tens of thousands. For
me, it was surprising to hear that since the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, Russia has carried out more than 9,000 attacks using chemical weapons against Ukrainian forces. This is significant, and since intelligence reports say that the use is becoming more intense, this is a major cause for concern. This shows that Russia wants to inflict as much pain and suffering as possible to force Ukraine to surrender.
We are talking about a documented fact of the use of these means. Grenades with poisonous chemical substances used by servicemen of the 114th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade. Russian servicemen dropped chemical grenades into the shelters of Ukrainian defenders. In addition, servicemen of the 136th Motorized Rifle Brigade of the country's armed forces and occupying forces were identified. These poisonous substances are also being used by National Guard servicemen.
By the way, a few years ago, the Russian dictator himself boasted that Russia had gotten rid of all its chemical weapons, but as usual, he lied.
A truly historic and momentous event, because today, the very last chemical munition from Russia's extensive chemical weapons arsenals will be completely and utterly destroyed. Without any unnecessary pomp or excessive ceremony, it can be truly and unequivocally said that this is indeed a profoundly historic event, especially when considering the enormous and vast stockpiles of dangerous chemical weapons we inherited from the Soviet times. These are stockpiles that, according to numerous experts and scientific assessments, possess the destructive capability to utterly destroy all life on Earth, not just once, but several times over. This is a huge step toward making the modern world more balanced and safer.
According to the results of a study by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the most common RGVO grenade contains not just tear gas, but a real poison capable of killing a person.
A hand grenade with a poisonous substance. The specific substance here is chloroacetophenone, a combat chemical agent from the group of lacrimators.
Approximately 70 drops of this gas are enough to kill an adult. Chloroacetophenone is completely banned by the Geneva Protocol. This fact may indicate the preservation of facilities for producing even more lethal poisonous substances, which violates the commitments undertaken by Russia.
The RGVO is produced by the National Research Institute of Applied Chemistry in the Moscow region, whose management, it seems, is proud of their illegal developments. We
survived only thanks to civilian products. We made all sorts of firecrackers, fireworks, and so on. We make a lot of things. Now, our priorities are still government contracts. And I think the key task for the enterprise is, as with any defense enterprise, its mission. That is to create the most advanced weapons for the Russian army.
This is about the deliberate violation by Russian occupation forces of international norms and the laws of war, and accordingly, a blatant disregard for international conventions. First and foremost, the Geneva Convention prohibiting the use of chemical weapons.
Sergeyev Posad has been struck several times already, after which there was an impressive detonation of the weapons produced there, but the institute did not stop its work. That's the kind of mushroom cloud that's forming. There was some kind of explosion, and that's the kind of mushroom cloud that's forming. Oh, how frightening.
One of our most valuable assets is that we have our own testing range. You know, probably near Maliniki, where Gremyachi is, we have a testing range, almost 600 hectares. It saves us in the sense that we have a very short time from developing a product to testing it. As a rule, everyone else has to go somewhere far away, to Dongus and so on. That means you have to spend a lot of time transporting the product. Here, this allowed us to resolve issues very quickly and efficiently.
Moreover, even Russian television has reported on the war crimes committed by its own army.
Here you can clearly see a gas mask that was hanging on the machine gunner and also some additional ammo boxes. Here is a gas grenade that we carefully dropped.
There have been about 2,500 recorded cases of Ukrainian servicemen seeking medical attention with symptoms of chemical poisoning of varying severity.
At the same time, Russian media engaged in their usual wordplay, claiming that it is Ukraine staging provocations in order to, as always, blame Russia.
The possibility is not ruled out that another anti-Russian provocation could be organized using Western-made toxic substances in order to then launch a new campaign within the structures of international organizations to accuse our country of allegedly deliberate use of chemical weapons.
But the Russian authorities can only lie to their own citizens, if anyone at all. After all, when there is both video evidence of use and even physical samples of banned weapons, all the chatter of Russian propaganda seems especially unconvincing.